Yeah, he's out again tonight. He's a great player, and they're in the wild card race.
They need him.
That has to be concerning. The Sun eliminated the Lynx, will now face the Liberty. Is that a good matchup?
I know the Liberty won all 4 matchups in the regular season, but I think it is a good matchup. College football tonight. Georgia State at Coastal Carolina. You staying up late for that one?
No. Last one. I'm giving you time. Bears GM Ryan Poles says no one in his building is panicking. You believe that, Mr. Bear?
I don't care about the building. In the building I'm sitting in, I'm panicked. And most of us that walk around Chicago on a rainy, cloudy day, we're panicking or close to.
We're out of time. We'll try and do better the next time. I'm Tony Kornheiser.
I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, Knuckleheads. Bears at Chiefs, and we're not panicked? I'm panicked. Now, Tony, you're sports center.
You look good panicked. It suits you. An Apple Watch like that woman in Michigan. That's brutal.
These stories are now getting like these studies. You believe these stories? It used to always be a Florida man. And now it's spread out around me. You believe this stuff?
I believe she fell into an outhouse toilet. Yes, I believe that. I believe that Apple Watches are to blame for this. Do you have an Apple Watch, Mike? I don't have an Apple Watch. I got like a regular
We're in
watch.
Shinola.
Welcome
right here
to
in the
PTI,
Midwest,
boys and girls. In today's episode, Dion's team heads to Oregon. Lionel Messi gets load managed, and the Mariners and Rangers are about to get very familiar. But we begin today with late news from Cowboys practice at star cornerback Trayvon Diggs went down with a serious knee injury. The NFL Network is reporting it's a torn ACL, which had put Diggs out for the season. Cowboys defense has been stellar through 2 games, leading the league in fewest yards and points allowed. Wilbon, what impact could you see this having on the Cowboys?
Well, Tony, I mean, losing a cornerback, teams now value cornerbacks, star cornerbacks like Trayvon Diggs, who's been a Pro Bowler, I think twice, been All-Pro once in the prime of his career, 25 years old. They view cornerbacks as more valuable than running backs. I mean, this is almost league-wide now. And so while I don't necessarily see it that way, teams do. And Trayvon Diggs, we don't talk about him as much as we talk about his brother, Stephon, because Stephon's catching passes in the end zone more frequently. But 18 interceptions over the past 3 seasons, nothing to sneeze at. And Trayvon may be as good as his brother. And these kids are from the DMV, from greater Washington, D.C., so you and I sort of pay a little bit more attention to them where we live. It's a big loss. But, Tony, even great defenses, I go back to this, the gold standard, my 85 Bears, they lost 2 starters. And they kept going. They lost Todd Bell and they lost Al Harris, 2 starters. And they kept trucking. They plugged and they played. And the Dallas Cowboys have to consider they have depth. So they're going to have to do this without Trayvon Diggs. It's a loss. Will it hurt the defense? We don't know yet.
Everything you said is good, and it is direct, and it is small picture, and I'm going to go big picture here.
Okay.
Because this is the story of this season so far. The Dallas Cowboys are the story. Because they went out and they beat the 2 New York City teams by a total margin of 70-10. And Dak Prescott hadn't thrown an interception. And they are at the moment fulfilling the fantasy. Everybody knows the Cowboys. They're the biggest thing in the NFL. They are to the NFL and have been for years what Deion Sanders is to college football right now. So this is, even small news gets magnified, Mike, but this is real news.
Yeah.
This is real news because he is a great player. Great player.
He is, Tony.
But what this is people who love the Cowboys saying, give me more of the Cowboys, and people hate the Cowboys saying, enough already with the Cowboys. The Cowboys are ahead of everybody right now, Mike.
When they're this good, they are must-see, but they got to keep 11 on the field. As long as 11 is on the field, even though he can't go play corner, and he's even more emphasis on now him game-wrecking, so you don't have to rely on any one corner, but it's a big loss.
I'm saying that this is, everything is ginned up with the Cowboys, and when it's real news, it's actually important.
It is.
Most is not important. Most is hype. We move now to tonight's game, the Giants at 49ers. Saquon Barkley will not play for the Giants as they go on the road against a top team. Wilbon, do you give the Giants a big chance, a little chance, or no chance?
Tony, I guess a slugger's chance, or maybe the 49ers are just a little full of themselves, maybe. I mean, you can always have that in the NFL, and you can always have weird factors come into play in these short weeks with these dumb Thursday night games. But I give them a small chance, a puncher's chance. Listen, I know that the Giants got smoked, in week 1.
Yeah.
And they didn't look too good for the first half of week 2. But, Tony, we saw them come back. They are potent, at least potentially. Look, I think the 49ers are every bit as good as the Cowboys, who we just praised to the heavens. So I'm going to give the Giants some chance, not much. I know I picked the 49ers in my confidence pool this week, and I think my confidence level is like a 12. They're not my 16-point game. So I give the Giants a little bit of chance to hang in there and steal something late.
Hundreds of thousands of people wait on your confidence pool every
confidence
week before
pool,
they have
baby.
their own. So it's good when you do that. I give the Giants no chance.
None.
Okay, and here's how I arrived at
None.
that. No chance. They're a 10-point underdog. If I gave them a big chance, I'd bet on them. If I gave them a little chance like you, I might try to work them into some exotic wager. But if you give them no chance, it's because you don't think they can win. I don't think they can win. I don't think they can get within 10. I don't think they can get within 12.
Wow.
They got destroyed by a good team. The Cowboys destroyed them. 40-0 is unheard of with playoff teams. The next week, Arizona's a bad team. They had to have the franchise record comeback to beat a bad team. Now they're in there with a good team without their best player on the road on a short week. And then people say, well, Brian Daboll is going to call the plays. Let me ask you something. Is he calling them for the same players who were there the last 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Because unless they're bringing in new players, I don't think it's going to matter. That's where I stand
He's not calling them for
right
Frank
now.
Gifford. He's calling them for Daniel Jones.
I don't think,
Tony, he can do enough, though, to threaten you. He can, because he can make 2 or 3 big plays a game and have you in it. But like you, I'm grasping at straws now. I'm looking for reasons to think tonight's game.
The other team's really good.
When it probably won't be. Yeah. Let's move now to the biggest ongoing story in college football. I might argue all of sports right now. Deion Sanders and his 19th ranked Colorado team head west to face number 10 Oregon. In the following week, 5th ranked USC with the Heisman Trophy winner come to Boulder. Tony, Colorado has already exceeded many expectations. So what, if anything, is riding on these next 2 games for Deion and his team?
So let me say first, thank God we have a Deion story, because I don't know how we could get through a day without a Deion story.
We can't.
Let me say after that, I think Deion has pretty much proven everything he's had to prove to this point. He has shown that he can attract and pick talent. He has shown he can motivate players. All right? He is the singular story of college football to this point. Now, I will concede, Mike, that if Colorado gets rocked by Oregon and USC, scores like 45-10, that takes a little bloom off the rose. But I don't think Deion has to win these games. On the flip side, Mike, if Deion actually won these games, they would be the unanimous #1 team in the country in the court of public opinion, and Deion should then run for president. He should offer every family in America a pair of sunglasses, and then he should stay by the phone, Mike, because the NFL is going to call if that happens.
Yeah. It was interesting, Tony, to hear him say, he said multiple times this week he's not interested in going to the NFL. I can say that now. Tony, what's at stake? Actually, if they win these two games, we're going to start talking about playoff. Yes, playoff. We're going to start talking about it. It's early still, right? And they still got they'd have some tough games left on the schedule. But, Tony, I look at this, and as hard as I've been cheering for Deion in Colorado, it's hard to see them winning both at Oregon and then beating SC. They don't run the ball particularly effectively. Defensively, they struggle. And one of the things I've seen about Deion, which is great, is his and his staff's ability to sort of cover for what they may be vulnerable at. And that's great coaching. Nick Saban talked about this on the record from Tuscaloosa this week, talking about how good a coach he thinks Deion is. And he's talking about tactically here. And when Nick Saban says this stuff, you have to listen. So, Tony, the playoffs could be at stake. If they win these 2 games, if people think this is a movement now, Tony, I don't see them winning both these games. But Deion has, yes, as you've said, he's really gone a long way to proving his initial and original point already.
I want to stress one thing. I want to stress this. Colorado was 1-11 last year. Their margin of defeat was 350 points in 12 games. They were widely considered the worst Power 5 team in the country. If Deion won 3 games this year, it'd be a success. He's already won 3. Okay,
Yeah.
let's move on. Lionel Messi, you boy, played 37 minutes last night as Inter Miami beat Toronto FC. Messi was removed with what was called muscle fatigue. After the game, the Inter Miami coach ruled Messi out of this Sunday's MLS game. There's speculation that Messi is being saved for next Wednesday's U.S. Open Cup final against Houston. So, Wilbon, are you okay with Inter Miami load managing Messi?
Yeah, Tony, if you put that phrase on it, load management is loaded. It's a loaded phrase. I mean, it's particularly in America where we associate it most frequently with the NBA and its big stars, its biggest stars. But Tony, at Messi's age and the amount he's played over the last year plus, I mean, he played a season at PSG, then he winds up playing World Cup, Tony. He played in the maximum number of games because they won.
That's right.
And then he goes back into club play. He's playing MLS. He's playing for Argentina. He's playing so much that I wouldn't call it load management. I'd call it smart to try to rest Messi when you can. And let's just hope it's just muscle fatigue. Let's hope, given the way he's played, the level he's played internationally is not more than that.
So I'm waiting for the MLS commissioner, Don Garber, because I'm sure he's talking to Adam Silver about load management plan here. I tend to agree with he's 36 years old. That's old for soccer. He hasn't had the usual amount of time off he's had. He hasn't just missed MLS games. He's missed an Argentinian game, a World Cup qualifier game at Bolivia. And, look, everybody thought he'd retire after the World Cup, so every game he's got now is basically gravy. And again, I will stress that he's old, and let's look at Max Scherzer and let's look at Aaron Rodgers and what happens to old athletes. But I will say this, Mike. I will say that if I had a ticket to this Sunday game,
I'd go.
I'd feel bad because this is maybe the only time I will see him live. And what I'm hoping for is that when Messi says, with about 25 minutes to go, is put me in, coach, I'm ready to go. Right? Something
Tony,
like that. Let's
absolutely.
Take a break.
And you want to pay. I'd pay good money to see Messi. And you'd be disappointed if he doesn't. But it's not, load management. Load management is such a 4-letter word. It is.
Let's take a break. Well, load is. Coming up, Ohio State and Notre Dame play a huge game on Saturday.
But is Ole Miss Alabama even more intriguing? Alabama.
I have to say, that was a funny line. Load is, that's a 4-letter word. Come on, that was funny.
Hyphenated.
You're not laughing like you used to.
After a 4-letter word.
You don't love me anymore? I'm funny. Come on.
Pardon the interruption.
It's time for toss-up. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves, finishes the show, then realize we already played this game on Tuesday. What's first?
Toss up. More interesting game this weekend. Number 6 Ohio State at number 9 Notre Dame, or number 15 Ole Miss at number 13 Alabama.
Mike, I would not have said this last year or the year before that, maybe not in any of the 15 or 16 previous seasons that Nick Saban coached at Alabama, because he made Alabama great again. But something is odd this year.
Yeah.
They're juggling quarterbacks. They seem vulnerable.
They're not great.
And Mississippi shouldn't be in there. Right. Excuse me. So earlier this season, he lost to one of his former offensive coordinators, Steve Sarkisian in Texas. Now he faces another former offensive coordinator in Lane Kiffin. If Alabama loses this game, Mike, they're out of the playoffs. Neither Notre Dame nor Ohio State face that jeopardy because they don't have any losses to this point. So while I will watch that game and I'll root for Notre Dame because kids who grow up in New York always root for Notre Dame, I think the other game's actually more interesting.
It's interesting about kids in New York rooting for Notre Dame. You grew up in New York, you root for Notre Dame. I grew up, my parents' house is 91 miles from South Bend. I know the distance. That's how many times I've made the drive in my life, Tony, to South Bend. Look, Ohio State is less arrogant than usual because they know they're not great either. There's no great team in college football. So it's interesting, Tony, how this matchup, which would have favored heavily, I don't know what the spread is, I don't care. But this circumstance would have favored Ohio State across the last 10 to 15 years. Right now, it seems more even than that. It seems like Notre Dame is just on even footing with Ohio State. This game, as you mentioned, is in South Bend. I'm going to watch this game with total fascination. I think the winner of it has a really good shot, given what's left, at being in the playoff, Tony. And I don't know that Alabama has that because they have the one loss. So I'm going to say Notre Dame, Ohio State. Total regional bias for me, just like yours, weirdly enough, is regional bias for you with Notre Dame.
Yeah. What's next?
Toss-up. Starting tomorrow, they play each other 7 times over the last 10 games. Which team are you favoring, the Mariners or the Rangers?
My instinct is to favor Texas. They've already beaten Seattle 5 out of 6 times, but all of those games, Mike, were before the All-Star break, before Seattle got hot. I would favor Texas because Bruce Bochy is the manager and he's got a nose for the playoffs. I might favor Texas because the games where they don't play Seattle, they play the Angels, which feels like a give-up situation now. Whereas Seattle, in the games they don't play Texas, they play Houston. And Houston, is going to try to win every single game out there. It's the best race. 3 teams separated by half a game. My hesitation on Texas is that Scherzer can't pitch. So I'm going to say something you never hear on ESPN in answer to this question. I'm not sure.
No, you never hear that. Everybody's sure. Tony, how dare you take this question and not have a hot take? You don't have one of those?
No.
Tony, I'm going to go with Seattle for one primary reason. They got the team best ERA in baseball at 3.70. And they got about the 4th or 5th best bullpen. So, this time of year, we're not in October yet, but we're moving to the case. I know we've had some teams involved in races like the Cubs with these 14-1, and then last night they gave up 13, and you can have some wild swinging games. But Seattle's got these last 10, and these are a big 10 games for the modern history of that franchise. Because, Tony, they've had some of these stretches late, and they faltered. They haven't come through going back some years. So I'm going to go with Seattle and that staff ERA and count on them to be able to handle both the Rangers
they were a playoff,
and Houston.
They were a playoff team last year.
And they were, but to be a playoff team this year, they're going to have to withstand quite a schedule in those last 10 games.
We're moving on. Let's take one last break. Still to come. Should we believe the Bears GM when he says no one is panicking?
And by no one, he means maybe himself. The Pacers may trade Buddy Hield. Where would he have some impact? I can think of a few places. I can.
You love Buddy Hield, right?
I like Buddy Hield.
Buddy Hield fan.
Yes, yes, that is.
Happy time, people. Happy 60th birthday, Cecil Fielder. Cecil Fielder and his son Prince Fielder were big-time power hitters. Cecil led the American League twice in home runs, in 1990 and 91 when he was with the Tigers. Those 2 seasons, Cecil had 95 home runs and 265 RBI. In 1990, he had his best home run total, 51. Prince led the National League in homers once when he had 50 for the Brewers in 2007. Remarkably, Cecil and Prince finished their careers with the exact same amount of home runs, 319. Cecil was a 3-time All-Star, led the American League in RBI 3 different times, and he was on the Yankees' 1996 World Series champions, batted 391 in that series.
Tony, Prince is just 39 years old now. If for those of us who thought he might stick around not only to break the tie with his pops, but maybe hit another 100 plus, 150 home runs, a neck injury essentially forced him out early at like 32 years old, which is too bad. We got to see that stadium in Detroit, that great old, was it Briggs it was called at one point?
Briggs.
That stadium in Detroit when Cecil was playing. The new stadium, it's fine. It's not as interesting. Not nearly.
Not so happy anniversary Auburn. On this day 27 years ago, the Tigers hosted LSU in what Auburn fans refer to as the barn burner game. Not because of the close loss to LSU.